our cell membrane is actually considered as the boundary of the cell. And this is actually an example of an animal cell. If you can see, the shape is something like round or irregularly round, no? And what covers the entire cell of an animal cell is a cell membrane. If we also go to our plant cells actually has two layers or have two layers, no, of protection. Aside from having the cell membrane, they also have a cell wall. Now, this green part here is the cell wall, which is the outer, no, the outer wall of the plants. Then the yellow part here, the yellow color that you can see, no, on the image is actually the cell membrane of a plant cell. And if we try to also look into the layers or the protective layer of our bacterial cells, they also have cell membrane. But first, as you can see, no, lahi color ang iyang covering. We have the brown part. This is what we call the capsule. Capsule is actually the protective layer of the bacterial cell that would protect the bacteria from injury. Now, for example, in our humans, there is the human WBC attack, no, and in the bacterial cells, no, there are white blood cells attacking the bacterial cells. So the bacterial cells would not be easily destroyed. It's because they have their capsule, no, that would protect them from injury. Okay. Then the yellow there, we have this what we call the cell wall. Then ang kanang something like flesh color, pinaka-inner nga membrane, that is your cell membrane of the bacteria, which means animals, plants, and bacteria contain cell membrane. And with the cell membrane, it actually adapts the idea of fluid mosaic model or a semi-permeable. Permeable siya but semi-permeable, where this is actually composed of two layers. As you can see, it's a lipid bilayer. Bi which means two, meaning two layers. We have this first layer, then we have this second layer. So the area of your plasma membrane, this is actually composed of a phospholipid bilayer with proteins. Phospholipid, which means there is phosphate group at the same time lipids. And since it's a bilayer, so we have two layers. We have kani nga akong gibutang nga yellow, then we have the black. Okay. And embedded within the cell membrane are actually different proteins, glycoproteins, and different protein channels. And with the two layers that we have in our cell membrane, it is said that there is a portion that is polar and non-polar. And in biology, or in the study of cells, we actually call them as hydrophilic or hydrophobic. In a phospholipid bilayer, since it is composed of two layers, there's that part there that is hydrophilic. When you say hydrophilic, meaning this is water-loving. There is also a part there that is hydrophobic. Phobic, there is fear of water. So meaning, since atong cell membrane is composed of a phospholipid bilayer, so phospholipid, asa man diri dapit ang hydrophilic, asa sa dapit ang hydrophobic? Is it the lipid tail or the phosphate heads? Now, hydrophilic, no? We have the hydrophilic heads or the phosphate heads. Can you see? Kanang akong gi-red. Okay, balik ko na ako. Hydrophilic head or the phosphate heads. Then the hydrophobic, ang na-fear sa water. Then we have your lipid tails. So every part of the cell membrane, there is a phosphate group, and each phosphate group na ay duha ka lipid tail. So meaning, igtanaw gini mo sa cell membrane, there is both hydrophilic and hydrophobic. Because we have phosphate groups or phosphate heads as hydrophilic, then lipid tails as hydrophobic tails. So miss, dili di ay dali-dali ang mga molecules makapass through. Now, there are some molecules that could easily pass through our cell membrane, pero nasa mga daghan nga molecules nga dili. Because, like I said, the function of your cell membrane is the boundary. It's a semi-permeable that would actually restrict or control the entry and exit of substances. Now, pertaining to the substances that can freely pass through, we can have proteins, no? Proteins can easily pass through our cells because this is actually one of the macronutrients that is needed by our cells. Then we also have carbohydrates. Then we also have cholesterol. Pwede ang cholesterol. It's because here, kita mo sa kanang nag-white, those are actually cholesterol areas. Para ang imuhang cell membrane, there is also the ability to slide off, more na mo slide, especially in the passing of substances. Now, aside from that, our cell membrane actually contains different protein channels. We have three: recognition, receptor, and transport. By the name itself, recognition, so its function is to recognize certain chemicals. It could also recognize chemicals that is good for the cells, or it could also recognize abnormal cells or invader cells. Then receptor protein, they receive direct specific signals and transmit messages, or the receiver of the messages. Then we have the transport protein as the channels or transporters of substances. And these transport protein are of different kinds. We have different types of the transport protein for our cell membrane. Now, we have ion channel, the protein pump, we have the aquaporine, and the glue transporter. Now, before discussing these four transport proteins, unsay ilahang each channel no in going in and out of the cell membrane. Now, we have gaseous molecules that could also freely pass through our cell membrane, and that is actually oxygen and carbon dioxide. Since oxygen is needed by the cell for respiration, and the same with oxygen, carbon dioxide can also pass through the lipid bilayer of the plasma membrane, since carbon dioxide is a product of cellular respiration. Now, aside from oxygen and carbon dioxide, our cells also need glucose, and in order for the glucose to enter our cells, that is actually through our glute transporter. No, it's because our cells need glucose, no, for it to survive, since glucose serves as their food also. Then, aside from glucose, we have potassium. The K ions move in and out of the cells through a specific type of ion channel that is open to this particular ion. So, ang potassium can freely move in and out of the cells through our ion channels. And we also have sodium. Since we have sodium, atoms continuously move in our ion channels, the same way with our potassium. However, since our cells na naman na siya sodium daan, if in case gani the sodium level sa ato ang sod sa cell is more, or is greater compared sa sodium ions that we have outside, then need nga ipagawas nato ang sodium. That is why we have this what we call protein pump. Okay, the potassium sodium pump, wherein atong cells kay mo pump out og 3 ka buok sodium ions, then ang mosod is a potassium ion. So 3 ka sodium ipagawas para na mosod nga duha ka potassium ions. Then aside from sodium, we also have water. Diba naman tayo hydrophobic nga area sa atong cell membrane, pero nga nung ang tubig pwede raman makapas is because we also have aquaporine. Then we also have enzymes. I will let you see kung unsaon nila pagtrabaho ang enzymes. Okay, let's try to look into the animated video, no? As you can see, oxygen and oxygen molecules can freely pass through, the same way with our carbon dioxide. Then for glucose, we have the glue transporter. Then for potassium, it will be transported by your ion channel. Then aside from potassium, like I said, you have your sodium in our protein pump. Our cells would pump out 3 sodium ions, then nay mosulod nga duha ka buok potassium ions. Because we need to have less sodium ions in our cell. Then the water, we have your aquaporine. Then the enzymes. Enzymes, we have hormones, antibodies, and other substances created within the cell or expected from the cell through a process called exocytosis. So, mura siya ang ato ang enzyme para mapagawa siya outside. That's exocytosis, exit. Kaya mura siya i-envelope, mura siya sphere, then usa siya i-gawas.